A reading from Isaiah. Shout out, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Announce to my people their rebellion, to the house of Jacob their sins. Yet day after day they seek me, and delight to know my ways, as if they were a nation that practiced righteousness and did not forsake the ordinance of their God. They ask me of righteous judgments. They delight to draw near God. Why do we fast, but you do not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? Look, you serve your own interests on your fast day and oppress all your workers. Look, you fast only to quarrel and to fight, and to strike with a wicked fist. Such fasting as you do today will not make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast that I choose, a day to humble oneself? Is it to bow down the head like a bulrush, and to lie in sackcloth and ashes, when you call this a fast, a day of acceptance to the Lord? Is not the fast I choose to loose the bonds of injustice under the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free? And to break every yoke is to not share your bread with the hungry, and to bring the homeless poor into your home. When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. And you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, Here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the sparking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places. Make your bones stronger, and you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt, and you shall rise up the foundations of many generations. You should be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the streets to live in. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
Please stand as you're able as we sing to welcome the gospel.
The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus said, You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You all may be seated. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this past Wednesday, I had an opportunity to open the sessions for the Senate at our state capitol building. So I got to share the invocation. It was a great experience, and for better or worse, I chose to hold August during my prayer. I hope that this would make an emphasis of the importance of children, And whether that point was made or not, I am certain my presence was memorable as I tried to pray with August squirming all over the place in my hands. When I was briefed before going in for my invocation, it was made clear that my prayer should not reference a specific legislation, advocate policy, and it should be a short interdenominational prayer that recognizes and respects the diversity of faiths. So, I decided to share the same adaptation of the Beatitudes that I shared with all of you this past Sunday, kind of an updated version of the Beatitudes, if you will. Patty came with me, and as she watched me struggle with August, when I got to the line that said, "Blessed are the immigrants," she said someone next to her went, as if the word immigrant alone has a political meaning. But immigrants are a group of people, and I'd hope that regardless of someone's political standing, they would offer them their blessing. They are just as much of a light for the world as you or me, especially when their situation is illuminated. You know, over this past season of Epiphany, you might have noticed we've focused a lot on social justice. And the reason for that is we are seeking to shine a light, especially on those who are suffering or those that need a light to be shined upon them and in their situation. Well, in the World Council of Churches, the Theological Consolation on Economic of Life, which was written in 2014, says that we should seek to be in solidarity with others. And solidarity is a baptismal experience. It states that we are called to go beyond abstract and distant from daily life generalizations to concrete engagement locally, nationally, regionally, and globally. So today, we are going to do something a little bit more concrete. Instead of me trying to explain what it's like to be in solidarity with immigrants and refugees, we are going to act out what it might feel like to go on a migrant journey. So in a way, it will feel like we are actually walking with them. This migrant journey was created by Amparo, which you might have seen there was a little bookmark today that was in with all of the papers that you got this morning. And this is a holistic, whole church commitment by the ELCA as a church in the world to accompany migrant and refugee children today and into the future. So today, we'll be starting our journey in Central America and traveling into the United States together. So what I'd like you to do is, if you feel comfortable just closing your eyes for a second, or as we always said at camp, this is your curtains down. And when you open up your eyes again, we will be in Central America. So if you want to go ahead and open up your eyes. By the end of this journey, you will be learning about why the reasons that families from Central America are forced to flee their communities. So starting in 2011, an increased number of unaccompanied children and families began to leave El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras and make the perilous journey through Mexico. In 2014, there were approximately 70,000 unaccompanied children and another 70,000 people and families who arrived in the United States from these three countries. The numbers have continued to be high. There was a slight decrease in 2015, partly because Mexico sped up detention and deportations of migrants. On our migrant journey today, we'll be meeting 8 different people. These stories are not of actual people, but rather they are combinations of stories that we hear over and over again in the ELCA. So now that you all have closed your eyes, we are in El Salvador. As we start here, think about what it might be like to be here. Think about what would make you want to leave your home and leave your country. Let's meet a couple of people. First, we will hear from a Central American mother who only speaks Spanish. The other Lynn is coming up too. She's going to say it in Spanish and you'll say it in English. Perfect timing, though.
Hola, soy una madre centroamericana. Hace algunos años mi esposo me dejó. Desde entonces he sido el único apoyo para mis 3 hijos y mis padres ancianos a través de una tienda pequeña que manejo del frente de mi hogar. Mi vecindad queda cerca de otra vecindad controlada por la pandilla MS-13. Hace 6 meses, la pandilla empezó a cobrar cuotas de todos los negocios en la vecindad, incluyendo el mío. Este pago quincenal ha aumentado y ahora tengo apenas el dinero suficiente para cubrir los gastos de mi tienda y alimentar a mi familia. Tengo un hermano en los Estados Unidos que quiere que vengamos allá y nos ayudará a empezar una nueva vida. No veo alternativa y estoy hablando con amigos sobre cómo hacerlo.
Gracias. And now in English.
Some years ago, my husband left me. Since then, I've been the sole support of my 3 children through a small store that I run from the front of my home in a large city. The store has provided a good source of income for my family, including my aging parents who live with me as well. My neighborhood borders another one that is controlled by MS-13, and gang members frequently are seen in my community. In fact, when my son became a teenager, gang members really tried to get him to join as well. So far, he has resisted, but one of his friends has decided to join. About 6 months ago, the gang began to collect quotas from all the neighborhood businesses, including mine. This payment, which happens twice a week, steadily increased, and at this point it leaves me with barely enough money to cover my store expenses and feed my family. But my brother in the U.S. will help me start a new life there if I can make it. I don't see an alternative, and I'm talking to friends about how to do this.
Thank you. Remember, these are real people and real situations that people go through every day. Next, we'll hear from someone else who will come up, and they are a Central American youth, to hear what she has to say about her situation.
I am a 14-year-old girl who has lived in the same community since birth. While my neighborhood has always been part of a gang territory, which means there are many controls about entering and leaving, I live down the street from my school and have felt safe in a daily life. Recently, however, I have caught the attention of a gang leader who wants me to be his girlfriend. I don't want anything to do with him, but I have been told by other girls in my community that saying no is not an option. They have told me stories of girls who were raped and even killed if they refuse. My family wants me to go live with my uncle in Los Angeles and is talking to coyotes about how much it will cost to get me there.
Thank you. Violence, impunity, and corruption, lack of opportunities, and environmental degradation are all driving people from 3 countries out of their communities to seek protection either in Mexico or in the United States. According to the U.S. State Department, the United Nations, and many other sources, violence plays a huge role in why people are migrating. Beyond violence, people are also leaving due to lack of opportunities, poverty, and environmental degradation. Police and other authorities figures often are the ones that are acting out the violence, or they work with other violent groups like gangs, so reporting crimes can be very dangerous. Approximately 95% of murders in these 3 countries are never solved. As we leave Central America, think about what would make you leave your home and your community. What would you miss the most if you left? Are you going to make the journey? Many people will choose to make the journey, and if someone chooses not to, they are likely to spend most of their time in their home because there are lookouts all over the neighborhood. They will also be putting their family at risk. People pay thousands of dollars to have someone guide them on a journey from Central America to the United States. Families often get loans or borrow against their house to pay for a coyote. The more money you pay, the more comfortable you might be, but the journey isn't safe for anyone. So let's take the journey. So now you have walked and ridden across rivers, deserts, and mountains, and you found a shelter. You are now in Mexico. At this shelter, you can shower and sleep. You've seen some of the most serious human rights violations that you've ever seen before. I bet you are pretty happy to see the shelter director that is here at this faith-based shelter. Many of the shelters that provide services to migrants along this route are faith-based and have been providing food and shelter for migrants for many, many years. Migrant shelters have had to adapt in the last few years because so many people are requesting asylum or refugee status in Mexico and are not intending to come to the United States. In fact, according to the United Nations, asylum applications in Mexico have gone up by over 1,000% since 2013. Most of these applications are from Central America. Before we made it to the shelter, we were stopped by a police officer at the border. So let's hear from that officer now.
I work for the local police in the town near the Mexico-Guatemala border. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the increase of families and children traveling alone and hanging out in the city center, alone from Central America the past few years. While seeing children traveling alone and hanging out in the city center breaks my heart, I've also seen an increase in crime along the highway that passes through town. While migrants are sometimes victims of these crimes, at times they are the perpetrators. I feel they have made my town more unsafe.
Now, temporary shelters like the one that we've made it to have a 2-day maximum for people to stay. And you are in the southern border of Mexico, so we have a long road ahead of us. We have used your money to pay for a coyote and possibly a boat to cross the river. Now you've had to give up your most valuable item, but you still need to get through almost all of Mexico with no money and your best bartering tool taken away from you. You hope another police officer doesn't stop you before you reach the US border. In addition to the dangers of hopping on a train or walking long distances, migrants say they encounter kidnappings, killings, theft, and many other forms of violence as they journey through Mexico. Sexual and gender-based violence is common, and women are often attacked. Rape is common, and doctors in Central America report that a lot of women get birth control before they make the journey. As we continue through Mexico, what would you be afraid of? We are now at the US-Mexican border. In your journey, you have likely experienced all sorts of different types of violence and discrimination. There are many people that you left behind. While in years past, many Central Americans tried to avoid law enforcement, today children and families are generally trying to turn themselves over to the authorities to begin a legal process. It's important to highlight that it is legal under US and international law for people to enter the United States and ask for asylum. Asylum laws were formalized after World War II. As we are here at the border, let's hear from a Border Patrol officer what it's like to work here.
I'm a first-generation American, and my parents moved to Arizona from Mexico many years ago, long before I was born and before my brothers were born. And as a kid, I always wanted to be a police officer, but I had trouble getting hired. The hiring practices in my local city prevented that, but somebody said I should be a Border Patrol agent. So I applied, and my skills in Spanish helped me get the job. And I've been a Border Patrol agent now for 2 years. And last year was really stressful with all the children and the families coming across the border. We would have to apprehend and process them. And I really do feel sorry for those kids, but I don't think their parents should be bringing them here, and I think they should come via legal means.
Thanks. Since 2003, the budget and the number of agents for border protection has more than doubled. Now, we have made it to another shelter on the border inside the United States. Now that we are here, let's hear from one of the shelter workers there.
I work with a religious group that has a hospitality house near the U.S.-Mexico border. We give people food, water, clothing, basic first aid, and a place to rest. We don't ask if they are legal. People find out about our group through word of mouth. We try to maintain good relations with the Border Control and the local authorities.
Thank you. Now that we've crossed the border and entered into the United States, lastly, let's visit a community like our own where children and families from Central America are waiting to make their case to an immigration judge. Although we might encounter unaccompanied children and families in our schools and communities, they are likely still awaiting an immigration decision and might still be deported. We will meet a couple of people who you might encounter in your own community. First, we'll hear from a local school teacher.
I am a school teacher in the U.S. who has seen the number of English language learners double in the last couple of years. I'm not completely clear why, but I know that most of the students have had to miss school to go to immigration court. As a teacher, I'm not sure how to teach these students, since I don't know how to keep them engaged in the classroom. In addition, their parents miss parent-teacher conferences because I suspect they don't know when they happen. Ideally, I would speak the language of the student, or ideally, there would be someone available in the classroom that spoke the language. However, neither are available at this time. So where does one go from here?
Being granted asylum is difficult. Individuals must prove they were targeted, have reasonable fear of future persecution, and that their country could not protect them. They must also prove that they were targeted because of their race, religion, natural origin, political opinion, or membership in a social group. As of April 2017, individuals have to wait approximately 2 years before appearing before an immigration judge. While there are backlogs in the immigration system, quickly processing people without enough time to gather evidence for their case is also dangerous. So lastly, let's hear from a local member of Congress.
Good morning. I'm a member of Congress from the Washington 11th District, which is just south and west of here. And it's my great pleasure to be here. I love being out amongst the the citizens of this great state of Washington. And I'm sorry that your representative, Heck, is unable to be here this morning because he might also want to comment on this, but I'll share my thoughts. Last year, I voted for a bill to expand the detention of families from Central America. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time to pacify many of my anti-immigrant constituents before the election. While it's heartbreaking to see these families traveling together through the things you've heard about this morning, I think resources are better spent to help U.S. families. We all know about the problems of food, homelessness, poverty, lack of health care. Those things are extensive. So I know many of the families are seeking asylum, but I'm not sure they're just not saying that so they can get into this country. Asking for asylum is completely legal, but I can't imagine that things are so bad in Central America as to merit receiving asylum. Heck, I even vacationed in Guatemala last year. So I hear from faith-based groups like yours that we have the responsibility to protect vulnerable children and families. And while my faith community has left me open to other ideas, I just don't think that my voters will accept a change in my position. So again, I thank you for allowing me to speak in front of you this morning. I'd love to stay and answer questions, but I've got another commitment I've got to run off to, so thank you.
Well, thanks to our congressman for that speech. So what I want you to think about is after your experience today, after our journey, how has the journey changed your perspective? What might it change the way that you would say or speak to your own congressperson? I hope that today's journey has helped you feel better connected to those who seek to find a new home here in the United States. And I hope that at the very least, you can feel more in solidarity with those who come here from Central America seeking refugee status. And I hope that these immigrants might become like a city on a hill for you, so that their plight cannot be hidden. And like a lamp, they are not simply put under a bushel basket, but put on a lampstand. Remember this: is not this the fast that I choose? To loosen the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and to bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see them naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own king? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and the glory of the Lord shall be with you in solidarity. Amen.